Hello, my name is Ben.
And my name's Josh.
And welcome back to FPL Graduates, and welcome back to another video where today we're going to be going through the fixtures for all the teams in the Premier League, and we're going to be having a look at them from an attacking and a defensive perspective and seeing which players you should probably consider as a result of that.
So we're going to take a look at the best attacking fixtures first, which teams that you should be buying the midfielders and forwards from for your FPL team. So we're going to get started looking at it here. Liverpool obviously top of the ticker, and that is because they've got the best attack with the best fixtures. Really, really nice run. I think from game week 9, if you're looking at that sort of game week 8 wild card onwards, after that, it's a ridiculous run. They face some really, really good teams going forward. So in terms of the likes of Mo Salah, potentially Luis Diaz, even Darwin Núñez, who we've seen score a couple of goals so far this season, I think that is the prime time to bring those strikers and forwards, midfielders in. I think right now it's a bit too soon, but if you're on like a wild card this week, I think you might need to bring in, if you're looking at bringing in Mo Salah, for example, you might need to bring him in now because the squad structure, it's going to be very difficult to find 3 million to try and boost up a Son or a Rashford to that price. What's your thoughts on that Liverpool attack, Ben? Is it worth investing now if you're wildcarding, or sort of hold off until later?
I mean, it's a really good, difficult decision on a wild card because you just know that, you know, those that are wild carding this week are probably not going to bring in Trent Alexander-Arnold because of his potential hamstring injury. But in a couple of game weeks' time, by game week 7 or 8, you could be absolutely fine, absolutely flying. And those fixtures are too tasty to ignore a Trent Alexander-Arnold. And all of a sudden, you've got that big dilemma of how to restructure your whole team to fit in one player. But I do definitely think it is of consideration to look at starting to get those Liverpool assets in, and at least considering who you're going to bring in. There's so many decent options to go for. I think Salah and Trent are obviously the safest, but Luis Diaz has seen a lot of minutes this season, and Darwin and Jota sort of rotating at the moment between the two of them and who's starting up top. So I think there's definitely some great options to go for there in terms of Liverpool assets, but it's just a case of almost waiting until those fixtures turn good.
Yeah, and then a couple of other teams that sort of catch the eye are Aston Villa and Crystal Palace. Obviously, in their attacks, £6.5 million midfielders. Two guys that come to mind are obviously Eze and Diaby. A lot of people owning Matoma and Mbeumo. Could be nice sort of sideways moves to bring in these guys. Obviously, Villa, a decent fixture run. Obviously, gets nicer towards game week 9 and 10 when they face West Ham and Luton. With Palace, they sort of start quite well. Some decent fixtures in there, some tough teams, but obviously this fixture ticker is based on the defenses of those teams. So, for example, Liverpool on this ticker is a green because their defense is poor. What's your thoughts on Villa, Palace? Do you think either of those guys are good assets to own right now, Ben?
Yeah, I think Villa is definitely one to consider, and I said this from the start. They look decent. Obviously, they do have European commitments, and I think Ollie Watkins has been overlooked as an asset somewhat. Yes, he's sort of returned very consistently, but not loads of points. But we know how good he can be, and as soon as he starts scoring, he is very much a player that once he gets on a streak, he can't stop scoring. So definitely would consider that, and the fixtures will produce form for some of these Villa players. I think Watkins, Diaby, even Matty Cash, we're looking at a defender, but in terms of attacking perspective, there's no one really better in the league right now from an attacking point of view. And I think Eze, managers who had him from the start have been patient, but I think they need to continue to be patient with those fixtures coming up. There's some really decent ones in there, and I think there's definitely some haul potential from those games.
Yeah, and then moving further down to still decent fixtures. Don't get me wrong. Obviously, this is like the top 10, I do believe, for fixtures in the attack. Newcastle, Luton, and Spurs. Obviously, we spoke about Newcastle in our deadline dilemmas video in terms of their attack. Luton's an interesting one because obviously it's not on this ticker, but in game week 7 they do have a double: Everton away, Burnley at home. Two pretty good fixtures. Would you consider anyone from their attack, Ben? Obviously, Carlton Morris is that main man, 5.5 million, a cheap option. If a lot of people have got João Pedro on penalties, is he someone that will come into consideration?
He'll be considered, but Luton have been pretty poor to start the season anyway, and unless we see improvements over the next sort of couple of weeks, with a couple of decent fixtures actually coming up here, with especially that Wolves game, there'll be a lot of managers keeping their eye on that one. But for now, I'm probably not too enticed by Luton in general, just because they just haven't shown any sort of real threat of scoring more than a couple of goals in a game. So for now, I'm probably holding off and waiting and seeing. I don't think there's any need to bring in the Luton players now until the double game week, and even then, you're probably going to want to get rid of them after that point. So yeah, I maybe wouldn't be looking so keen on the Luton guys.
Yeah, and to round off, obviously Spurs at the bottom, they've been pretty good going forward so far under Ange Postecoglou. Some decent fixtures there as well. Obviously, the hardest one I'd probably say there is going to be Arsenal away. I think Liverpool at home, decent fixture for Spurs there. Liverpool's defence is really poor, especially away from home as well. Would you be looking at maybe even doubling up on a Spurs attack? Obviously, I know you have Maddison already. Would someone like maybe Son or Kulusevski come into your thinking?
Yeah, I definitely think there's some consideration for that. I think that a minimum of one is sensible for this run. I think, yeah, like you said, the only difficult one in terms of the Spurs attackers is potentially that Arsenal away fixture. But I do think it's shown from the start of the season that Spurs can score a lot of goals against pretty much anyone in the league. Like, they've looked really, really good. So I definitely sort of look at a minimum of Maddison. Again, if we're looking at an attacking perspective, the wing backs as well. Destiny Udogie looks good from an attacking perspectives. So I definitely consider that too, because the defenders are chipping in with attacking returns too.
So we're going to take a look at the best defensive fixtures now. Who's going to be keeping the clean sheets, hopefully, in the weeks to come. It's been a bit of a difficult thing sort of predicting the clean sheets so far this season. In game week 4, we only had 2 clean sheets, which was not the greatest. And Nottingham Forest and Liverpool being the teams keeping those clean sheets. Here we see Villa top the list in terms of clean sheets, mainly due to their fixture run towards the end of sort of game week 8, 9 and 10 there. Obviously, Newcastle as well, decent defensive fixtures. One of the really, really good defense as well. They've not conceded too much XG considering the teams they've played. Obviously, they've faced Man City, Liverpool, Aston Villa, some really, really difficult teams to start the season. Is there any teams there, Ben, that you think, right, I need to hop on those guys' defenders?
I'm looking probably at Newcastle in terms of defences. Like you said, the XG they conceded against top quality teams hasn't been too great. And I think that the fixture they got coming up with, it surely is going to be time for Newcastle to keep clean sheets. A couple of defenders have dropped it in price as well, which only sort of increases the appeal. A lower ownership, a more potential to gain points by hopping on the Newcastle defence earlier rather than later. We all know that this fixture swing was coming. We all planned for it. So those who did have Newcastle defenders and sort of selling them, it's probably not my recommendation to do so. In terms of other defenses, again, Spurs, who are looking decidedly a bit more defensively solid, with a decent fixture run as well. Like, if you're happy benching Udogie in a couple of these fixtures here, you could have a fantastic fixture run and a fantastic rotation with your defenders with those Spurs guys in there. So there's a couple of teams in there that definitely piquing my interest in terms of how good they're going to be from a defensive point of view.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one team to avoid definitely from this list would be probably Fulham. We've seen so far this season, I think they've conceded the most expected goals against. Fair enough, they've played some difficult opposition, Arsenal and Man City in that time, but even so, they've just not looked good defensively whatsoever. They face some okay teams in their sort of time. Luton at home is obviously a really nice one, but other than that, Sheffield United maybe. Nothing too great. I've seen a lot of managers go towards Leno because I think he's quite high in terms of total points so far this season amongst goalkeepers. But I think that's more due to the case that no one else in the league can keep clean sheets. I think he's obviously getting a lot of save points. What's your thoughts on that Fulham defense? Is it like a must avoid right now, right?
Yeah, I'd probably not sort of go anywhere near the Fulham defence right now. Just because of the goals they're conceding and one of the worst, or if not now, probably the worst defence in the league statistically. Yes, they've got some really nice fixtures coming up, but I just don't see many clean sheets coming from anywhere right now with Fulham. They may sort of improve with the reintroduction of João Palhinha, which is one to monitor because he could change a team in itself. But yeah, for now, I'd probably steer clear.
Yeah, and then the last player that I'm going to touch on is going to be Trent Alexander-Arnold. Obviously, looking forward maybe to the game week 8 wild card there. Brighton away, not the best fixture, but after that, Liverpool go on a really, really nice run. Is he someone that would maybe come into consideration if you're wild carding, Ben? Obviously, he's got the attacking threat as well. Have you seen enough of that Liverpool defence to think he might keep some clean sheets?
Yeah, I'd probably again wait with the Liverpool assets. Like I said, with the attacking side of things, defensively, we haven't seen too much good come from the Liverpool defense so far. They've conceded to the likes of a lot of XG against Bournemouth, actually, nearly 2 XG against Bournemouth on their own. So I'd maybe look and wait and see, because I don't see too many clean sheets, but I do see attacking returns from Trent Alexander-Arnold in those fixtures they got coming up.
Rounds up the fixtures to look forward to in the upcoming game weeks. Let us know who you're going to be looking at team wise and what fixtures you think are decent, or what teams that we sort of missed out of those lists who you think might perform well compared to the FDR.
And as always, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And as usual, I've been Ben.
I've been Josh.
And we'll see you guys
Later. Have a good game week, everyone.